This is going to be a video on the rune system. Generally the rune system. People have been liking my videos lately, so I decided to try to put something out about the rune system. I have a couple personal anecdotes here, as well as some advice, really. This is mostly aimed at Riot. People like to, I guess, watch these things, so I guess I'll keep making them until you guys get, oversaturated by them. So, the first problem I really want to go over with the rune system before delving into any specifics here. If any of you have played Europa Universalis 4, it's a 4X game. Sorry, Grand Strategy, really. But either way, the point is I run a mod for it. I make a mod for it, primarily to rebalance the game for multiplayer. The biggest issue in the rune system that I can use from that anecdote is idea groups, which are basically, think talent trees except for a country in EU4. Yeah, kitty. I've had a problem for a very long time where anything that gives raw power will generally overvalue anything that doesn't give raw power. And that's a problem I really was seeing with the rune system when they're working with it on the PBE. And I see it here now. And let me go ahead and show you here. The problem right now we're seeing with the sorcery tree is it gives you flat damage, which is amazing. It gives you poke, which is amazing. It gives you mana. It gives you movement speed. It gives you damage. None of these things are utility. None of these things are interesting, really. And all of these things are very, very overt in your face, if you get me. To throw a comparison here, if you look at minion destabilizer, this doesn't help you kill champions. This doesn't give you mana to kill champions. This does absolutely nothing for killing champions. What it does do is, well, it gives you utility. It gives you this weird effect that you're kind of expected to figure out, how do I use minion destabilizer? How do I make use of this to achieve a win? Things like futures market. Once again, do you try to go over time to get a trinity? And you'll see very quickly there's a lot of funky things in here. There's a lot of, when you look in what is this, inspiration, you see a lot of these funky things that are interesting, or approach velocity, celestial body, minion destabilizer, futures market, biscuit delivery, head stack flash. All these things are very interesting and unique, but what is picked in here? It's very obvious. Cooldown reduction, because it's a stat. It's power. Magical footwear, that's gold, that's power. That's 350 gold and 10 movement speed, power. Perfect timing, free stopwatch, gold, power, buff. Your things are that's power. These are all just raw power, and it's no surprise that these end up being the most picked and most popular rune setup. Kleptomancy, raw power. Unsealed Spellbook is a bit interesting, and I've seen people use it, but by far, Kleptomancy is the most interesting, and the most bullshit, and the most needed to be removed. So, that's just something I wanted to talk about. It's an issue I saw Riot was going to fall into. I knew they were going to fall into it, and I knew they thought they were going to be able to outsmart it. And look, as a dude that makes a mod for EU4, as a dude that gets 40 people together who all theory craft on a level you guys couldn't imagine. Okay, we're talking people running spreadsheets and shit to try to figure out the most effective combat build. People that have broken the stuff I've tried, because I'm adjusting numbers, and people can break those numbers in ways you didn't see coming. And I knew Riot wasn't going to be able to do it. I just knew it. I hoped they would, but I just knew it wasn't going to happen. This is a developer pitfall, really. I see a lot of games fall into this. How many games do you play where it gives you a choice between a bunch of options, be it an RPG or an RTS, and you got, okay, so you can do this, and this helps you kill people better. Or you could do this, and this is kind of interesting, but it doesn't help you kill people better, so you're probably not going to get it. A lot of games fall into this issue. So, there are a few things here. Mind you, there are, I guess the argument I can make here is, I read an article a long time ago. I think this is like an extra credits thing on YouTube, some shit like that. I don't remember. Basically, the argument this guy was making was that things that are complicated should be more powerful because they have a higher skill cap. Things that are basic should be less powerful because they have a lower skill cap. So let me go into the sorcery tree again. Should celerity be powerful, even though, let's be honest, what is it doing? It's giving you damage, it's giving you movement speed. It's very basic. The advanced part of it, the bonus damage from bonus movement speed, it's not a lot. You can't really build around it. Most characters are just going to get it for the flat movement speed anyway. Well, flat, 3%. The bonus movement speed is what's important here. Scorch. Now, this is probably the dumbest, I swear to God, the dumbest, least interesting rune in this entire tree. What is this piece of shit? Like, damage. What does it do? Damage. How is it interesting? Damage. That's all it does. After 1 second. Why? I'm unsure why that was even added. After 1 second, you do a little bit of damage. What? How does that even? What does that add? It's almost like it was added to make it seem like if I turn off the detailed tooltip, that's what it is, right? Like even your fucking tooltip can't make it sound interesting, and I this is so dumb, but I completely lost my train of thought. Anyway, it's very clear to people, I think, who use this tree that a lot of this stuff is not interesting. A lot of this stuff is very basic. Let me actually try to give you an example here. Right now, you can go absolute focus. And absolute focus, you think to yourself, okay, if I'm playing an 80 carry, could I maybe go rapid fire cannon, keep my health up? If I'm playing Xerath, can I poke at people from far away? Now, obviously, the pitfall here, the risk is, are you saying absolute focus will give bonus damage to poke champions who sit back? You know, is that what you're achieving? That poke champions will sit back and poke people down and get effectively, you know, free damage from this? Well, you know, maybe that's what you're running into. But is that a little bit more interesting than celerity? Maybe. And if other classes get interesting runes that can be used, it would counteract this, and you wouldn't run into that issue anyway. You know, if I as a bruiser could pick something where, I don't know, if somebody runs away from me, I gain attack speed, you know, something like that. You know, I'm not saying that's the greatest example ever. I'm just saying it would be a very niche, specific thing that would buff me personally. So if they had something specific and niche that buffed them, I could get something specific and niche that would buff me, while at the same time being a little bit more complicated than run faster, also hit harder. So with that out of the way, let me go into all these things, and I really just want to critique all the runes here. So press the attack, very stupid to me that they didn't give this anything bonus for melee. You can see press the attack champions are doing poorly. If I open up op.gg, there's a problem with their database. Okay. Let me open up champion.gg. If I look at Jax, his win rate is down to 49%. Only Jungle Jax maintains a positive win rate. And you know that's irrelevant because once you get to high, or even moderately high low, Jungle Jax gets devoured by other people. The fact that top lane Jax dropped to 49% is no surprise. I said that was going to happen. I think it's going to drop further still. Pressy attack sucks. It sucks really, really hard. And it really... Fervor had a melee component. The replacement for Fervor was going to have a melee component. This is no melee component. Lethal Tempo. This one's a little bit more interesting. I've seen a few people do some interesting stuff with it. I tried it on Kled. Pressy attack's better. Lethal Tempo, I've seen it on Aatrox. Now, I have seen some people trying to make this work. It does seem that Aatrox would be the only champion in the entire game that could make this work. To put this, to explain why I'm saying that, press the attack gives you bonus damage, then increases the damage you deal, correct? From old sources. It's a little bit ambiguous, but whatever. Lethal tempo, on the other hand, gives you bonus attack speed. What is attack speed? Attack speed is damage. Now, why would lethal tempo be only good, or rather perfectly fit on Aatrox? Aatrox is a burst-ish, attack speed-ish champion who wants to get in there and ram you with his ultimate. Now, press the attack is good for if you're just going to fight forever, then press the attack is amazing. However, press the attack also gives you 12% bonus damage. Bonus damage is damage. Attack speed is damage. So really, in order to be perfect with lethal tempo, you need to be a champion who's not only getting damage from their attack speed. You also need some form of on-hit. Now, what is the only champion in the game who's not only getting damage from their attack speed? Aatrox. Because of his healing W. Because of how his kit functions. Now, we don't know whether or not if Aatrox is really good with it, but that's just an interesting way I've seen it used. Blade Footwork has no melee component, and in fact was added with a crit component. Much like I thought before, if you're not playing an AD carry, this might as well be grayed out for you. Horrible decision by Riot. Not sure what's going on there. Overheal, this should also just basically be grayed out if you're not playing an AD carry. But maybe that's fine. Maybe this goes into what I was talking about before. It's a niche case for an AD carry, right? If you're playing someone, if you're playing with like a Nami or a Soraka, you know, they can keep topping you off and getting that 300% excess healing. So that's somewhat interesting, but I feel it's so unbelievably niche. You have to be playing an AD carry. You have to be with a shield support. Sorry, healing support. And you have to be with one that knows that you're going over healing. And you also can't be getting, you know, burst or poked or anything. I mean, is that too niche to me? I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little bit hypocritical and biased by saying that, you know, since I can't use it, then it's bad. But Triumph, I don't know why this gives gold. I feel like runes they shouldn't overlap in what they're trying to do. Do you understand me? If it's trying to say you can combo kill, why is it also giving you snowball potential by giving you additional gold on kills and assists? I truly believe that this should be returned to 15%, and they should remove that 25 gold. That 25 gold, especially at low ELO, gives so much gold. You know, when you're getting assist, because you're all running around like morons trying to kill each other, yeah, shockingly, Triumph had a really high win rate. In order to, what's the right way to put this? Bridge the win rate between high ELO and low ELO, that gold should be removed so that low ELO isn't gaining, because you have to remember low ELO has more kills. In case you guys didn't know that, low ELO has more kills, obviously. If you want to branch the win rates together, you need to remove that bonus gold. Presence of mind, this goes into what I was talking about earlier. This goes into a very niche case. Now you can say, okay, it's broken because Kassadin's strong with it, but isn't that kind of what runes are supposed to be for? You know, he's not just getting damage. He's not just getting, you know, this isn't Scorch. You have to play and use it on a specific champion. And maybe it's not interactive. Maybe it doesn't really change much, but at that point I would say it's just a duration issue. For 7 seconds might be too much. You know, and maybe that is what removes the counterplay. If Kassadin can, you know, ult, and you can't really time it out or run away. Legend Alacrity, Legend Tenacity, Legend Bloodline. The problem here is I'd rather have 3% attack speed early game, as well as a little bit more in snowball potential. I'd rather have that in 99% of situations versus some tenacity or some healing. And really, the tenacity one seems the weakest. With how many knockups are in the game, getting a mere 20% tenacity is not a big deal. You have to remember, not all percents are created equal. 20% tenacity is not as strong as 18% attack speed. It's a bigger percent, but it's a bigger percent of a number that means less. It is, if I had 100% tenacity or 100% attack speed, the attack speed would be way stronger. So keep that in mind. Legend Bloodlines suffers from the fact that building for later in the lane, when I could be winning the lane right now, is kind of a big deal. It also falls into the pitfall that mid to late game, having 18% attack speed is actually kind of a big deal. Having 8% lifesteal really isn't. Down here, now this is kind of going into what I was talking about before, because coup de grace, it synergizes with itself. You take down an opponent, and you gain damage or ability power, and you do more damage to low health opponents, right? So you can take them down, get that bonus stuff. This is kind of boring, though, to be completely honest. It's basically just giving you damage. And in addition to that, it's basically helping characters like Katarina Snowball. I mean, you've got a generalist rune, deal 9% damage to people below 40% health. Okay, so if you're trying to burst people down, if you're a target who tries to, finish people off, this is good for you. But then you get this random thing on here, also, hey, if you can kill a target, then immediately move to a second target, now you get bonus damage. So you have a generalist role with a more specialist role. There are characters who can't immediately go from a takedown to getting large burst on other people. And it lasting 10 seconds does mitigate that effect somewhat, but at least in my opinion, I feel like it's look at Jax, for example. How much is 9 damage worth to me on Jax? Not a whole lot. If I've killed a target, I've likely used my cooldowns. If I go to next target, leap strike, there's 9 damage. Auto attack, 9 damage. W reset, 9 damage. These aren't high numbers here. To compare that to a champion like Riven, Riven gets a kill. Shields, okay, there's 9, but she also has her ult, so really it's going to be more than that because her ult increases her bonus damage by 20%. Each Q knows a, 0.4 something AD ratio now, something absurd. I don't remember. I think it's like 0.6. I don't remember. I actually just don't remember. Either way, Riven's shoving out these giant AD ratios, 1.5 on her auto, and that's not and that's just Riven, but you start looking at champions who can actually go for combo kills, Katarina, huge. Kassadin, huge. It's no surprise that Presence of Mind coup de grace starts to make Kassadin a little bit diddlier. Cut down is like this is basically added to make AD carries kill tanks. Let me ask you a question, Riot. Do AD carries need more help at this point killing tanks? And if they did, why are you putting it in a rune like this versus something that maybe targets tanks more directly? You're basically saying if you build health, I will hurt you. But how many bruiser items? This keeps being an issue we keep running into. AD carries are buffed against tanks, and bruisers are like, hey, or tanks are being buffed against AD carries, and I'm like, yeah, Thornmail counters bruisers, not AD carries. Then Red buffs Thornmail because it's not countering AD carries, and I'm like, hey, you guys don't account for bruisers when you make any decisions at all, ever. When an AD carry walks up and, double crits me for half my health or some shit like that, I start thinking about cut down. My eyes start rolling and I start going, okay, well, this is pretty much what I expected to happen. Last Stand, not sure what's going on here. Last Stand basically suffers from not being coup de grace. Now, Last Stand Triumph could be a combo. It really could be, but that comes down to Last Stand. It really comes down to the champions that should be using it aren't using it. And is that a problem that the runes are too weak? Yes. If I'm playing Olaf, why am I going into secondary Magical Footwear Cosmic Insight? Why am I not going Last Stand Triumph on an Olaf? So just a question to pose. Domination, way too much niche in here, in my opinion. Way too much niche. First off, electrocute's shit. I don't know why you guys did this. You basically took away its laning phase combos as compared to Thunderlords, and then just made it hit really hard in the mid game. And it kind of sucks fighting electrocute. Riot went on and on about, oh, we're seeing squishies aren't bursting each other, and then you go into the game, and I'm like, were you guys testing the same shit that we got? Cause Predator, not sure what's going on here. It seems to basically be, let's let junglers gank people even easier. It seems to be every change. Let's let them gank people easier. Okay, you can gank people so fucking easy at this point that it doesn't matter if it's easier. If you touch them, they die at this point. If everyone has a nuclear weapon, you don't need a second nuclear weapon. You're all being nuked anyway. So Predator suffers from that. Dark Harvest, I'm gonna be honest, what does Dark Harvest do that's more interesting than Electrocute? Electrocute, burst people down. Dark Harvest, burst people down also, but it stacks. Not a whole lot of interesting stuff going on there. Taste of Blood might have been interesting. This is clearly the replacement for Feast. This might have been interesting if it... I struggle with things like this because it was very clearly designed for early game, and it does scale a little bit, but let me ask you something right now. The champions who would most want Taste of Blood are champions that want to trade. If I want to trade, do I want to heal? Or do I want to do more damage? With that in mind, am I going to go Scorch or Taste of Blood? I'm going to go Scorch. Now, let's also consider, what does Taste of Blood scale off? Bonus AD and ability power. Who are champions who want to trade, but would be interested with a little bit of healing instead of a little bit of damage? Bruisers. Who doesn't really get a lot of bonus AD and no bonus AP? Bruisers. So my question posed to Riot is, would it not be a little bit better and more interesting if Taste of Blood was changed to just a flat 20 to 60, like an opposite Scorch? Maybe a little bit bigger, maybe 25 to 80, something like that, maybe even added something more interesting, maybe it's 20 to 60 increased by, maybe doubled if you're below 30% health. Maybe that would be too random when it came off cooldown and healed you, but, maybe something like 50% before, below 40, so you can try to stay in the lane a little bit. That would make it interesting. That would be people play around it. That seems to be the objective. Cheap Shot, once again, this seems to be something that you would pick on a champion and then it just does more damage. It's not terribly inspired. It basically seems if you're playing Olaf, you get Cheap Shot and do that tiny bit more damage, but you're not playing around it. And the damage is so small, the cooldown's so small. Why true damage? It seems weird to me. Scorch is magic, but this is true. But anyway, this basically can't be strong because it's so spammable and runes are so weak, which is another issue. But runes are so weak that this can't be interesting ever. You can never make this high enough damage to be relevant. But it will never be high enough damage to be relevant. So my suggestion would be to drop the true damage altogether and do something else. If you slow an opponent, something happens. Maybe something damage oriented. Maybe it slows them by a little bit. Maybe if you slow an opponent, then you hit them, the slow duration is added. Maybe you get 0.5 more seconds on the slow. I'm spitballing here. I'm not thinking this through. Sudden Impact, another very, very boring, very, very, very boring rune. Basically, do you use a dash and want to hurt people? Go Sudden Impact. Most people with dashes want to hurt people. Most people in the video game want to hurt people. In fact, every champion in the game generally seeks to kill their opponent. So if you want to use your abilities and then at some point kill an opponent, sudden impact is good for you, so long as your ability moves you. It's not very interesting when you actually think about it that way. Zombie Ward. This actually changes your playstyle a little bit. It's also adds a little bit of gameplay. Very powerful, and so powerful that it actually competes against the pure damage runes. It's a little bit interesting, actually. Probably one of the more well-designed ones. Ghost Poro, pretty much the same thing, but weaker than Zombie Ward. Eyeball Collection. Hey, are you killing people? Do you want to continue to kill people? Go Eyeball Collection. I don't have any more to say than that. Ravenous Hunter. This whole line down here seems very uninspired. I mean, especially the active item cooldown reduction. I'm not sure what's going on with any of this. If there was still the old Gunblade, then Ingenious Hunter plus Gunblade might be able to do something interesting. You know, you get less cooldown per attack, and you can reduce its cooldown. Can you Gunblade 2 or 3 times in a fight? I think the reload passive being removed is one of the dumbest things Riot has ever done. Well, probably not, actually. I mean, it's probably top 500 dumb things they've done. All in all, I'm not sure exactly what's going on down here. Most mages have AoE. Most champions have AoE damage at this point. So, if you wanted Ravenous Hunter to be good, I feel you would have to make it something else. Because most... Especially, if you made this total healing, it might be a little bit more interesting as well. If we made it total healing, that would impact Trinity, Lichbane. Maybe made it total healing, I could actually see this maybe being used on some champions. But then it would be very overpowered for the laning phase. But it only impacts champions, right? Oh no, it impacts everything. Maybe make it total damage, but only on champions. I could see that working. But you're going to have to run into the issue where only low ELO really gets kills on everyone. So I guess my suggestion with all of these is to add a secondary way to stack it. Much like Legend Alacrity. If you takedown stack it, why not minions and shit, you know? But especially make it, I know this tree is supposed to be for supports. Relentless Hunter is supposed to be for supports, but this could actually be more interesting on a champion like Jax or Riven. If maybe it didn't have the AoE reduction, maybe if it affected all damage. Not too popular right now. So far as this tree, I mean, it's so obvious why this is the best tree. Flat damage, great for the laning phase. Low cooldown poke, great for the laning phase. Infinite mana, great for the laning phase. More move, great for the laning phase. The most uninspired, hey, do you want to do more damage in the laning phase rune? And let me ask you, do you want to do more damage in the laning phase? Generally, yes, you do. So far as criticisms, Summonary, that's probably top 200 dumbest things Riot has done. Did you really not expect non-supports to use this? And now you're kind of locked into a terrible decision because you couldn't foresee the problem of people wanting to win the laning phase. Yeah, people generally want to win the laning phase, dude. Also, the shield bonus is kind of bullshit. It's way too strong. The whole thing is strong. Too strong. This whole tree is too strong. Arcane Comet. If you have any slow ability, then you get more damage, is basically how this reads. Like, turn detailed explanations off, and it might as well read, if you have slow ability, those abilities do more damage every X seconds. Phase Rush, you gave the slow resist. Okay, so let me just be clear. This wasn't good on melee, and this wasn't good on range, and you decided to only buff it on range. In a way that's very cancer, I should say. And if it's abused on any ranged champion, they quickly become immune to melee champions. Do you know what it's like when first Storm Raider Surge and then now Phase Rush is actually good on a champion? It means Olaf can't touch them. It means Mundo can't touch them. It means Darius can't touch them. You give melee champions slows, then you make something that says LOL slows, go fuck yourself. Terrible design decision out of Riot. I would actually recommend entirely reduce the movement speed, the slow resist to 25% on range. Just do that even if it's not good. Just do that as a general, let's do this so this doesn't become an issue in the future. I know Riot hates trying to prepare for the future. You know, they love when things turn to catastrophes rather than actually putting in the effort to deal with them now. But deal with this now. So far as why is it not good? Arcane Comet does damage the entire game. Phase Rush gives you shit movement speed all throughout the game. Until late game. Then it becomes relevant. But Arcane Comet is still relevant. So I don't think Phase Rush should be the anti-slow ability. I think it should just be the move really quickly ability. So far as separate abilities, that one gets a little bit more complicated, doesn't it? Generally speaking, I think the early game movement speed should be increased. Probably 25 to 40%, maybe 25 to 45%. But again, yeah. Nullifying Orb. This goes back into the issue I was talking about before. I made suggestions that the bonus base damage on Steric's Gauge, as well as the on-hit on Titanic, should apply to things like this, so that bruisers, you know, close the gap a little bit. And it would be a very little bit. We're talking they would get, what, maybe 90? So this would do what? You know, maybe 100, 10 to 15 more for them. Yeah. So it helps close the gap. I'm making that point right now because there's a very clear gap in bruiser strength and non-bruiser strength. Very clear gap. So far as Nullifying Orb is concerned, it's niche. I'm not sure why it's only for magic damage. Maybe Riot said it was too strong, but you're basically saying if you're a mage, there's something that counters you. If you're not a mage, there's nothing that counters you. So Zed can get Nullifying Orb to try to reduce Kassadin's damage, and maybe Kassadin's a bad example. Let's say LeBlanc. Zed can get Nullifying Orb to reduce LeBlanc's damage. What can LeBlanc do to Zed? And maybe the problem came down to mages were using it to kill AD carries too well, using their vast ability power and you know, shit to burst mages. Because when you look at it, when you have 600 ability power late game, you know, you're talking about 180 shield. And maybe that's not a lot. Maybe it's not a lot. But maybe that's a problem. And I guess my only counter to that argument means 180 health is not that big a deal. It's mostly useful early game for edging out a win in a trade if you're dying. And that's really, it does nothing unless you're trading and dying. And in the late game, the health is so insignificant. So why not just let it affect physical damage so people can pick this up to try to prevent a Zed kill, a Ka kill, you know, something like that. And maybe this becomes the new staple for AD carries. But I'm not entirely convinced that AD carries being a little bit more self-reliant would be bad for the game. Nerfing support's ability to keep AD carries alive and making them a little bit more self-sustaining would actually be quite good for the game. It would help, you know, make low ELO feel less like low ELO. You know, you go to play low tier games and you have AD carries who just get bursted. You play a high tier game, anytime you try to touch an AD carry, you got Janna, you know, with like the frickin' whistle, like no touching. Okay, Ultimate Hat, it's interesting, I suppose. So, Manifold Band, dumb. Horrible. Not even gonna go into why. We all know why. Transcendence, interesting, a little bit interesting. Some people have done some stuff with it. Altogether, most people find it weak. Why is it weak? Oh, I don't know. This is interesting. This is raw power. Do you want interesting or raw power? You want interesting. In Bizarre World, you want raw power. Absolute Focus. It's not interesting and it's not raw power. It's a little bit between them. I mean, again, I struggle to say this should be viable, and it probably is being used in a couple builds I haven't checked already, but maybe the counter is if I don't get movement speed, then I can get, you know, if I don't need movement speed, if I'm Zeroth, then boom, I get this instead. But then you're basically once again saying, what beats a sorcery tree? A second sorcery tree. Down here, interesting. Play around it. Good rune. Hate it, but at least it's interesting. It's probably terrible design, actually. I mean, probably some of the worst design I've seen. But at least it's interesting. Hey, when you hit people, they take damage. Gee, thanks. I guess. Resolve tree. Overpowered, actually. Very, very overpowered. Tanks cannot lose trades with Grasping and Dying right now. Triple buffing Grasping and Dying, as well as letting it stick up for 4 seconds, which technically is one of its buffs, but it's basically mean that tanks can sit on this forever, proc it, use their abilities, proc it again. Oh no! Now they've gained 10 health. Basically means that trading with a tank becomes hazardous as hell, because anytime I try to trade with a tank, they get permanent health. What do I get? Nothing. I mean, I guess I could use Klepto, but, you know, now you're, you know, whatever. So, Grasping and Dying should probably just lose the permanent health stacking, and that would be a decent nerf. It would probably still be overpowered, but at least it would make you feel less shitty about trying to trade with a tank. You gave tanks 20 armor and 20 magic resist at level 1. Kinda cool. Guardian. Haven't seen many people use it. Unflinching. It's an interesting counter to try to stop champions like Nasus. Demolish. Pretty shit, actually. Pretty much comes down to, do you not need Font of Life? Do you not need Unflinching? Then you go Demolish if you're going down the Resolve tree. Otherwise, don't get it. It's not strong enough to get on its own. And it only starts to impact the laning phase if you're winning. And how are you winning if you don't have a rune until you're winning? Are you playing a champion that crushes the opponent so hard? Well, maybe. I think the timer should probably come down to 3 seconds. That would make it a little bit more usable. I think. Cooldown could also come down. I know what they're struggling for. They don't want champions like Teemo using it to quick rush a first turret, but it seems like more of a Teemo problem than a Demolish problem. If you make champions that are so outrageously powerful that they can run into the opposing turret, by default, they're just so much more powerful that they automatically win lane, therefore can take Demolish, and you know they're so powerful that they can sit on the opposing turret and there's nothing the opponent can do to prevent it. If you truly have champions in your game that powerful, nerf those champions. Winning the laning phase is one thing. Sitting outside your opponent's turret with 3 turrets, being able to one-shot them if they try to fight back, that's not interesting. Font of Life, I mean, obviously we know what this was for. Iron Skin Mirror Shell Conditioning, I actually have a problem here. You should get the 5% bonus permanently at level, what is it? After 10 minutes. Just say, additionally, after 10 minutes, you permanently get the 5%. Okay? Early game survivability sucks. Not all champions can heal. If I'm playing Jax, or I'm playing, any champion without a heal, or at least without a spammable consistent heal, this sucks. It really does suck. I think that's why you see a lot of people not going down the Resolve tree. I'm not saying this would be the buff it would need, but I'm saying, you know, And I know you don't want to make it 8 armor and 8 magic resist, but maybe make it 8 after 10 minutes. If this was gain 5 armor, and if you heal, you can gain 5%, and after 10 minutes it becomes plus 8 armor and 5% permanently. Okay, I could dig that. As for conditioning, most people don't want a rune that only impacts you after the laning phase has been decided. And with no rune, you're very much trying to decide the laning phase against yourself. So this whole line has an issue. People on Reddit are like, oh, why does nobody go with defensive runes? They exist. It's like, I don't go with them because they suck. Because I'd rather do more damage than eventually, maybe if I haven't lost the game, get a little bit of armor and magic resist. Overgrowth clearly made for low elo. Dumb. Diddy dumb, dumb, dumb. Revitalize. Honest to God, I don't know what this does. Does it affect Aatrox? Does it affect, like, Maokai passive? What does this affect? Does it affect Redemption? What does this do? Second wind. You heal if you take damage. Is that actually what it says in the... Okay. The tooltip should be changed to heal if take damage. Forward. Just make it heal if take damage. Kind of boring. It's interesting on Kled, but Kled is the only champion it's interesting on. Everyone else it's boring. Inspiration. This is interesting. I like it. This is... Here, I'm going to tell you the problem right now. Sowing an enemy with an active item. Now, the problem I have with this is active item. And slowing a champion with an active item. This becomes very niche. Very, very niche. Basically, the other problem is it argues with champions over what you want to do. If I choose this on Jax, obviously the best armor item suddenly becomes Omen. But why am I pushed into Omen because I wanted to slow my opponent early game? Why is that a design decision? Why not separate the slowing with an active item? Why not make that its own independent thing and then make, Glacial Augment its own thing as well? And then Glacial Augment's a little weak, by the way. I know what they were going for, but maybe it should be reversed. Maybe it starts high, then goes low. Because especially, like, if I'm playing Jax and I want to go Glacial Augment to fuck with people, I apply... is it like a 20% slow? Like, so many champions just gap close away from that. Like, it's so difficult to find a use for this. And it's not permanent, and it's got a long cooldown early game. And it clashes with Kleptomancy, as if I'm auto-attacking people, I get an effect, right? And I know people will say you're oversimplifying things, but I'm really not. If I auto-attack an opponent, I get an effect. Kleptomancy, okay, so you have to use an ability, but big whoop. Yeah. In Modern League, you have to use an ability. Gee, where will I find one? So Kleptomancy, I use an ability, hit an opponent, get an effect. Glacial Augment, I hit an opponent and get an effect. If I'm... And really, it's just Kleptomancy being random. And it sucks that it's random, and I really wish this would be removed from the game or significantly reworked. But I find it hard to argue for Glacial Augment in a world when I can go Kleptomancy. As far as down here, perfect timing is way overpowered. Way overpowered. Every freaking champion in the games right now running around with perfect timing. Shit's so annoying. Everyone has Azanya's Hourglass. Gee, it's harder to dive. It's harder to get kills. If you're the one that's fed more people, if you're the one that's fed and going for kills, then you're the one that's popping everyone's Hourglass, which means you're getting very frustrated. This sucks. It really does. I think this should be removed entirely. Unironically. I'm not trying to be sarcastic. This is one of the only runes I think shouldn't be reworked, but instead should be removed entirely. This sucks to fight. It generates gold, it fucks you up, and then it also gives you a permanent buff. This is interesting, kind of. It seems to be made for supports who need a mana cap and want to heal. A little bit of a question mark going there. Very niche. Maybe it's just what some people needed, but okay. This is niche and interesting. I think people thought this is... I hear this all the time. Oh, it's going to be so overpowered because I haven't heard of it. It's something new, therefore it's overpowered. Then you get into the game and it's like, oh, well, I didn't use it because it's not perfect timing. We need destabilizer. I'm not sure what's going on here. I don't know what's going on here. What does this do? Who wants this? Who is this built for? Is this for if I'm having a difficult lane as Jax, I go minion destabilizer so I can last hit better? Okay, then why don't I go with magical footwear and get bonus gold for doing nothing? And then I also get movement speed. Oh, but it increases your damage to minions. Who asked for that? Who's having difficulty killing minions anymore? Futures Market. Once again, it's new. I haven't heard of it before. It's overpowered, says Reddit, says Twitch chat. Yeah, okay. You know why Futures magical footwear? Let me ask you, why aren't these used? Perfect timing. Why aren't these used? Magical footwear. But if you didn't have these to exist, you probably wouldn't go into this tree at all. So, let's focus on Futures Market. This seems intended for champions that want to complete big items early. The lending fee of 50 gold is very excessive when you actually consider what's happening here. This item gives you 300 gold at 10 minutes, basically. I mean, that's what it amounts to. And then if you complete your item, it gives you 50 more gold. And then it also gives you permanent 10 movement speed. At 10 minutes, I can go 200 gold into debt for a 50 gold fee. So, which of these is better? Very obvious. This seems targeted towards people like me who want to build an early Trinity Force. I would never build this. Would never get Futures Market. I cannot imagine a world where I would go Futures Market instead of a combat rune to generate more gold by CSing better, or alternatively, a gold rune that just gives me gold for existing. And I exist pretty good, so, down here, Cosmic Insight, Approach Velocity, Celestial Body. This is boring, this is dumb. This probably made a lot more sense in their minds before they actually played the game. This is basically, hey, do you play Janna? Yeah? Okay, you're tankier now. Cool! But why are you tankier? Why is it interesting that Janna is tankier? Why does Janna being tankier make my game more fun to play? Can anyone answer me those questions? And if you can't answer those questions adequately, my follow-up question becomes, why does it exist? Approach velocity. Somewhat interesting, seems to be held in check because Riot was terrified that bruisers were going to use it, like Mundo, like Olaf. Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm going to use that over Cosmic Insight, right? Maybe in a good world, maybe I feel like this is close to viable. 12%. 15% at the highest, but then that probably makes Nunu overpowered. But let me ask you this question, Riot. If I slow an opponent and I'm running towards them, yes? In what world can I not catch an opponent I've slowed already? In what world can Olaf not catch an opponent he's slowed? He's hit with his skill shot and he is running towards. What world can Nunu not catch a target he's slowed by 60%? I'm going to answer that for you. A world where he's being peeled by somebody. If I'm being peeled by somebody, does 10% movement speed matter? Is 10% movement speed the difference between me getting in range and me not getting in range? The answer is no. 10% movement speed will not affect that. So if that is a situation where this becomes useless, you need to fix that situation. Do you fix it by saying gain 10% movement speed and 50% slow resist? No, because then you make champions like Olaf and Mundo too difficult to peel. Right now, I don't know what the answer would be. But all I can say is there's what you need to fix. Take your information. Cosmic Insight. Kind of boring when you think about it. Kind of very boring. Do you scale with cooldown reduction? Do you like stats? Are you a champion in League of Legends? Then this is probably good for you. It's not focused on anything. It's just, do you use abilities? It's probably good for you then. It's not weak enough that you wouldn't want to go it anyway. If I'm playing a champion that scales poorly with cooldown reduction like Jax, this isn't weak enough that I wouldn't pick it. I'm not going to pick this even if I scale weakly with cooldown reduction. This cooldown reduction is good. Item cooldown reduction is good. Summoner spell cooldown reduction is great. This seems pinned, at least in conception, this seems pinned towards champions who want to get that 45% cooldown reduction. And yet it is not strong enough. Sorry, let me rephrase that. It is not weak enough on champions not aiming for the 45% cooldown reduction that they wouldn't want to pick it. So it's great on champions like Riven that are going for that 45%. But even on champions like Jax, I'm going, yeah, okay, great. 5 cooldown reduction, man. Sign me up. So that pretty much covers all the runes. It's a bit longer than I wanted it to be. But I suppose that's all my videos lately, huh? So far as people complaining about the quality, oh, did I have the fucking Twitter thing on the whole time? Well, I am not re-recording this. I'm sorry. Yeah, so basically, I think I might be the worst streamer and YouTube maker. I'm terrible. I don't do editing. I barely know how to use OBS. I barely know my settings. Most stuff is default, actually. So when you guys come to me and you're like, oh, could you do this? I give you a very non-ironic no. I cannot do what you're asking because I don't know how. I basically brute force everything through sheer strength of will. How do I stream if I barely know how to use OBS? I just brute force it, dude. Like, I have one scene. I don't have multiple scenes. Every streamer's got multiple scenes. I don't. I don't have a capture card. I don't know what that is. I don't have a streaming PC. Like, we just through sheer strength of will made this work. Yeah. Yeah, when people make jokes, it was Dom who said this, like Hashinshin is all mechanics, no skill. And I'm like, yeah, it does sound like me. You know? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I pretty much just go in and how do you split push? Split pushing is terrible now. We pretty much just, you know, brute force it on in there, man. So yeah, I just felt like tacking this on at the end because I get insulted a lot. You know, oh, you're a bad streamer. You don't know how to. You just stream with a webcam on. I'm like, yeah, actually, that pretty much does define me. I got some stuff. I got some help from people. Great help. I probably couldn't do what I do without help from people. You know, 100%. If I didn't have people help me do the settings initially, I wouldn't be able to. If I didn't have people initially come to me, you know, do emotes for me initially, I probably would have gotten a lot less subs. Definitely would have. If I didn't have people moderate for free, you know. So, yeah, just, yeah. So, I guess this is me, I guess, going to Riot and saying, you know, you guys don't know what you're doing right now, you know? Let me open up a notepad and try to get what I'm saying. Currently, I think the guy in charge is Meddler. Okay? Meddler. That's, I'm very tired right now. It's 7 letters, okay? And I like people being in charge. You do need, leadership, but I don't think Meddler is exactly what's right. When I look at runes, I notice a very distinct problem here. How did a new system launch? And how is a new system a month in? And how did this system get through here? And this is something I want everyone to think about, why I get very frustrated at Riot. This system is in here, and they've already admitted they want to increase their rune count by 33%. How did you get a month in and just now realize, holy shit, guys, we forgot runes for like a third of the champions? You kind of fucked up there pretty badly. And this is not the first time they fucked up. The fact that Thornmail is still in the game, probably one of the biggest fuck ups they're making right now. Let me ask you something. Where does Nunu go? Why are so many champions going Arcane Comet? Because it kind of makes the most sense on most champions. Like, everyone's like, well, I like doing damage, so damage is great. Why don't they just give a melee modifier to press the attack rather than trying to push a new keystone? You know, maybe just make the proc damage hit harder on melee champions. Period. Not hard. Like, I feel like way too often Riot does this thing where they make the game and then they pretend that this game controls them. You know, oh, it's so difficult to balance it, but you're in charge of that. That's your job. So what I really think is, I kind of like Meddler, but I like the M from his name the most, you know? And I feel like if you had someone like Meddler with, you know, his name started with M, but maybe it was also 7 letters, you know? Maybe somebody who talked with the community more, who listened to grievances more, who was willing to really be the hammer that came down and say, you know what, this is a dumb idea. This champion is stupid. This champion makes the game worse for everyone. Someone who said, I don't care if Teemo isn't viable. Him being unviable makes the game better, so we will make him unviable. Somebody like that. Somebody who started with M and had 7 letters and just kind of was the master of sucking. But sucking in a good way. Sucking in the way that, yeah, you kind of get annoyed at him that he keeps hammering you down. But on the other hand, you're kind of happy that you have someone there who shuts bullshit down. That's really what Riot needs. You guys need someone to shut bullshit down. Because there's a lot of bullshit, and it's very clear that you guys are so not shutting bullshit down. You get someone in there who is very counter, is really counter. Someone who, I'm trying to think of the word here. But you basically need someone who goes against the general will. There's a whole lot of people at Riot right now. I don't even know who I'm supposed to be talking to, really. Am I supposed to be talking to Meddler, who's in charge of stuff? Am I supposed to be talking to Ghostcrawler? You know, am I supposed to be talking to the people in charge of the PBE notes? The people in charge of Reddit reception? Like, there's so many layers and so many... Who does shit, and how do I talk to them? Like, this is actually an open invitation. If there's someone at Riot who I can actually legitimately talk to and air grievances with, I would much prefer that. You know, back in the day, I could go talk to Morello. Can't do that now. But I don't... I feel like Riot as a company just... I know this is really long-winded at the end of the video, but nobody watches this far anyway, and I really feel Riot is lost, and I feel I'm lost on what to do. You guys just don't seem to shut your bullshit down anymore, and... Do I have to be the bad guy and just make these videos? Because, like, I don't think I'm the bad guy for saying Teemo is bullshit. I don't think I'm the bad guy for saying you shouldn't buff Riven every single time she's unviable for a week and a half, you know? Like, let me actually pull this stuff up because it's so stupid. Like, you currently got a champion like Riven, 6th highest pick rate, but also a positive win rate in a meta very much against her. In a meta focused on being ranged and poking people down, here's a champion who's full melee and can do trades. She's very counter to the meta right now, and yet you've basically brute forced her into top lane. Now, she's generally balanced against champions like Teemo and Ornn and Jace, but once you get out of those champions, she's very overbearing right now. Very, very, very overbearing. And you've basically brute forced her win rate up. But I guess my question is, why did Riven receive larger buffs than a champion like Renekton? Where even are you, Renekton? Why did Riven receive larger buffs than a champion like Aatrox? Why is Thornmill still in the game? I'm going to ask that a lot. Why is Thornmill still in the game, though? Seriously? And yeah, that's all I have to say. I know this has been like a 10-minute rant, but seriously, you guys need to hire someone who hates the bullshit you do. You can't all love the game because sometimes you need to hate it, I guess, to love it. Sometimes you need... Yeah. This sounds really dumb, but yeah. Basically, you can't all just be permanently in love with everything you do. So anyway, that's the video. Bye-bye, everybody.